Welcome to Fake Presidents, a real podcast about, well, you know.
Each episode, we will take a deep dive into a fictional American president from pop culture to see just how much fiction there really is.
We're two former political junkies who do like talking about politics. We just don't like talking about actual real-life politics.
Because it's just too darn depressing. I said that way too happily. Because it's just too darn depressing. Better?
No, can you do it even more depressing?
Because it's just too damn depressing. I'm Eric Buckman, a former political consultant turned TV writer.
And I'm Ben Oren, a former journalist, sometimes speechwriter, and all-the-time TV producer.
And today, we're going where we actually haven't been in a while.
We're going into...
the White House.
The residence. The White House.
Yeah.
In 2025's Netflix series, The Residence.
Yeah. Because Paradise, I guess, had some Oval Office scenes, but not really any residence scenes. And the bulk of it, of course, takes place in
the new White House.
In Paradise. Yeah. And then we did Captain America: Brave New World.
Yep.
Harrison Ford never makes it to the White House.
We see the White House. We see the top of the White House. We see the outside of the White House.
Oh, I take that back.
Collapse.
I'm confused. I was thinking of Air Force One, where he never makes it to the White House. Oh no, in Brave New World, he's in the White House.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, they're kind of doing a state dinner type thingy there, kind of like
yes,
here.
there is. Yeah, there is a state dinner. There's the event, the kickoff event.
Yeah, and violence breaks out.
Yeah.
At both state dinners.
Yes.
And what else have we done since then? I feel like we did one more thing.
Well, we did Zero Day.
0 Day, where I think you get some fleeting.
We're inside the White House. Yes.
In the Oval for the Angela Bassett scenes.
Yeah.
But yeah, the residence proper.
In the Paradise, we're in there a bunch. We're the day of the event where we go from the Oval Office. We get a little walkthrough. He talks to a janitor. We talked about the butler.
But that's all the West Wing. I don't think we've spent this much time in the residence since 1600 Penn.
Wow.
Another TV series, the Josh Gad TV series with Bill Pullman as the president.
That was a long time ago.
That was during our first
2021.
term.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was before we got reelected.
Yep.
For another 4 years.
For another four more.
My name is Andrew Shepard, and I am the president.
So we're in the residence, brought to us from Shondaland. She is not the creator of this, though. Has no hand in writing whatsoever.
No? Has she done anything since Crossroads?
Since Crossroads. You mean the Britney Spears starring vehicle from, 2001?
Yeah, from 2002, Britney Spears Crossroads. She did that. I was like, you can't top that. So, why would I even... It would ruin my image of what Shonda can do. I
know she wrote Princess Diaries 2.
The Dojo,
Anne Hathaway. Trying to think anything since then that she's been involved with.
She's only become the highest paid writer in television history.
Yeah.
Has Grey's Anatomy broken every record for being on TV? Has it bested Bonanza? Are we waiting for that showdown?
It probably has. The problem is a little show called Law and Order SVU went on the air 8 years earlier.
Oh, yeah.
And it's still going. So as long as that keeps going, any show that's premiered since 1997 is going to have to compete or live in the shadow of Law and Order.
Yeah. I call it the SVU.
Law and Order, yeah. Live in Dick Wolf's shadow. It's quite the shadow.
It is.
But she did not write this.
No.
In fact, it's a TV series with only one writer.
He wrote every episode. Paul William Davies.
Who has a shockingly short IMDb page.
But if you work on the shows that he worked on, yeah, you can have not a lot of credits if you worked on Scandal for a number of years.
Yeah, he basically went from... It looked like his staff writer year was spent on a show called Betrayal, which my memory of it came out after Revenge. And so I just thought, this is just another network's attempt to get in on the revenge action.
But Betrayal there's no revenge in it. It is just about it's just about the betrayal.
Yeah.
They're like, revenge. There's already a show called Revenge, but what can we do? Oh, yeah.
It's basically a prequel series to
Yeah.
Revenge. I always thought that we should do a prequel series to Cold Case, where just every episode ends with them going, "Man, this one's tough. No one's ever going to figure this out."
Yeah, everybody's always going into like the final act being like, how the hell are they gonna solve this? There's like no time left and they've gotten nowhere. And then you just see them put it in a desk. And close it.
Every episode ends like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
It's just filing it away. So he wrote for Betrayal, then went to Scandal, then created a show called For All the People.
For all the people or for the people?
For some of the people.
For some of the people. I think it's whatever. It's for the people.
For the
It's about-
people.
About lawyers?
It's a
Sexy.
DC set, the federal prosecutors versus federal defenders.
And they're all like sexy.
Yes, it was definitely trying to be a Grey's Anatomy in legal land.
Okay.
And then he's got a gap in his resume where I guess he spent years developing this because
Well, I'm sure he spent years just getting paid to write stuff that was never made.
apparently this was announced when Shonda first got her Netflix deal. Like this is one of the projects that was announced back then. And and so this has been in the works for a while. And I don't know the guy, never met the guy, but I imagine since he wrote every episode and having seen it now, he probably spent a lot of time, let's just say, sewing a sweater of narrative threads.
Yes. His background, he's a lawyer,
I would have guessed playwright.
a former, yes, that would have been my guess too. No, he's a former lawyer, and he initially broke in as a comedy guy, which also
Really?
explains a lot about the show.
But he's not had any produced comedy
No, but he apparently he sold some pilots.
that were in the comedy zone.
Yes.
Oh, I might need to get my hands on some of those. Yeah, any other creative people worth mentioning? I mean, that's just it. Without any other writers.
That's it. So why don't we go through the cast?
Okay, this
Very
might take
quickly.
a while.
Very quickly. Huge cast. Okay, we got Uzu Abduba, who plays Cordelia Cupp, who's the best detective in the world, perhaps. Also a birder. We've seen this actress in
Orange is the New Black.
That's what most
Also
people...
on Netflix?
We have Giancarlo Esposito as White House Chief Usher, A.B. Winter. He's the person who is murdered. We could just say that happens right off the bat. He's had a huge, long career. He was in Spike Lee movies in the 80s. He was in Breaking Bad. He was in Captain America.
Brave New World. Yes, everyone knows that. That's where all of our audience is going to recognize this actor from
Yeah.
Captain America, Brave New World, obviously.
We have Randall Park, who plays Edwin Park, an FBI agent who's paired with Cordelia Cupp to solve the murder. Randall Park, fresh off the boat.
Wow, Ben. Whoa.
That TV show, Fresh Off the Boat. And he's been in tons of things. He's a great comedic actor. He's part of the Marvel Universe.
And the
Yeah.
DC universe. He was
the
in the
DC.
Aquaman movies.
He was. Oh yes, he was in he's in every universe.
All the verses.
There's Ken Marino as presidential advisor. Harry Hollinger. He's one of my favorite comedy guys. I'm a state guy. He wants to dip his balls in it. That's
Yeah.
what he wants to do. He wants to dip his balls in it.
I want to dip my balls in it!
We're going to keep running through this. Susan Kelechi Watson plays the White House assistant usher. Jasmine Hanley. Shit. We got Isaiah Whitlock Jr. as Larry
Yes.
Dokes, the chief of police. We know him
Yes.
from The Wire, where he had his catchphrase, shit, which he also used in the Spike Lee movie 25th Hour, where he played a cop who says, shit. And oddly enough, after I watched The Residents, I needed a palate cleanser. I watched Goodfellas, and he's in it. One of his first roles, he plays a doctor at the end of the movie who gives Henry Hill some Valium or something to calm him down because he's all like coked up. We have Molly Griggs as Lily Schumacher, who's a social secretary. There's Jason Lee as Trip Morgan, the president's fuck-up brother. We all know him from My Name is Earl, Mallrats, from skateboarding. For those of you who follow skateboarding, he's a former skateboarder. Bronson Pinchot, rocking an accent as Dieter Gotthard, the pastry chef. Bronson Pinchot, we all know. Balky Bartakamus. He
Yes.
does The Dance of Joy. He was also in True Romance. Great movie, which also featured Val Kilmer. Rest in peace.
He's also in 3 out of the 4 Beverly Hills Cop movies.
Yes, he is. We got Mel Rodriguez as Bruce Geller, who's like a water engineer there. He is such a funny actor, Mel Rodriguez. I loved him in Last Man on Earth. There's former Senator Al Franken as Senator Aaron Filkins. There's Eliza Coupe as a different senator. They don't play the same senator. She plays Senator Marjorie Bay Bricks. There's Kylie Minogue, who's playing Kylie Minogue.
Yes.
Then there's also Jane Curtin, Taron Killam, Julian McMahon, whatever. And, of course, as the president in this Shonda-produced show. I mean, she's had freaking names in her other series playing the president. In Scandal, the president was, what's his face?
Oh, the bad guy from Ghost.
Yes, the bad guy from... No, the bad guy in Ghost were those spirits who, like, drag people.
Tony Goldwyn.
Tony Goldwyn.
A director in his own right. I think he does more directing these days than acting. But Ben...
He is not in this show because as the president, President Perry Morgan, they were able to get... I can't even believe they were able to get him, Paul Fitzgerald. Working actor whom I don't recognize from anything.
Ben, you forgot a cast member.
Who'd I forget?
You forgot the actor who plays the first gentleman.
Wait, the first gentleman?
Yes.
Wait, the president isn't female.
You forgot Barrett Foa playing Elliot Morgan, the first gentleman and husband to the President of the United States, Perry Morgan. Because this is the first time that we've covered a homosexual president in the White House on our show after 4+ years.
Burr, 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 burr.
I mean, here's the thing. It's not for lack of effort. We would have covered one sooner. Hollywood just hasn't made one.
No.
Or if they have, audience, if there's one out there we've missed, let us know.
I mean, to be fair, I think maybe like there's some film production companies in the Valley that might have made some movies featuring.
There might be some streaming services that have versions of Scandal with a very different kind of scandal at the heart of it. Speaking of Tony Goldwyn. Not that he would be in it. I mean, I don't mean like Tony Goldwyn would be in that. I just mean, speaking of the TV show Scandal, never mind. You know what I mean, audience.
Yes. So that's the entire cast. I'd like for everybody to take a moment and repeat it back to me.
This is a presidential favor.
Well, we can't leave out the fact that this was based on a book, which we mentioned before in our preview of this episode when we talked about upcoming series. It's called The Residence Inside the Private World of the White House by Kate Anderson Brower.
Which is based off of a murder, right?
Which is not. It's just a very detailed look at the inner workings of the White House from the point of view of the people who do all the working there. It's if you're curious how the White House operates, there probably is no better book that covers it than this. The murder mystery was invented wholesale in order to craft a narrative out of all the different stories that are in the book.
Or was it like a case of the Orchid Thief, an adaptation where Mr. Davies was signed up to come up with a show based off of this book, The Residence, and he goes fucking crazy. It's like turns into a murder mystery. The same way with the Orchid Thief turns into what adaptation?
Well, my guess is they had this book and they love the detail to it. And at some point, someone said this could be the basis of a TV series that's more straight up Downton Abbey, but in the White House. Yeah. And then someone realized that might be boring as fuck. And so, what if someone dies and we can have some fun with it?
People died in Downton Abbey all the time. They got the flu. They died. Did anybody ever get kicked by a donkey on that show? I don't know. They died. People died.
We're here to talk about the residents. We're here to talk about the president's family, anything involving the president. In fact, we don't need to talk about the underlying mystery of this mystery series that we can probably go spoiler-free up until maybe the section where we have to talk about what this show says about the year it was made. Yeah. I think we can get away with that. Although it might be a mini spoiler to say that the fact that we can talk about the president without revealing who the killer is means that the president probably is not the killer. Was not murdered. And was not murdered. That was the other show that we watched, Paradise. But if you watch the trailer, you knew that.
Yes.
And so the plot in a nutshell is it's the night of a state dinner to honor the government of Australia.
The U.S. has had some toxic relations with Australia. is
Yeah,
what they say.
we can get into that. But yeah, so while Kylie Minogue is singing downstairs to all the invited and some uninvited guests, upstairs, Giancarlo Esposito is going through a bit of a crisis at work, putting out many fires. Well, not literally. Well, maybe some literally, but mostly not literally in the White House, only to wind up dead himself. He becomes the ultimate crisis that everyone else has to deal with when his dead body is found in one of the rooms of the residence. It's actually found on the third floor, which is the most residence of the residence. It's the truly private floor for the first family. And then Cordelia Cup is brought in to figure things out because there's a bit of a, let's just say there's a bit of a jurisdictional dick measuring contest to start the episode off where the pilot, is it the FBI investigating? Is it the Park Services, which technically is responsible for the grounds? Secret Service, what do they do? And then, of course, you have the DC Metropolitan Police, which technically, according to the series, technically it's on them to investigate any crimes actually committed in the White House.
Yep.
That's them. They're the ones who bring in a consulting detective because they think this is a pretty open and shut thing. They just want to bring in their best person to open it and then shut it. So that's it. That's the whole thing. I don't think we need to go through beat by beat of the investigation.
No. Basically, everybody's a suspect because everybody at some point has said about A.B. Winter, Giancarlo Esposito, their boss, who's a hard ass, I want to fucking kill him.
Yes. They shine a light on everyone from his successor to the various chefs of the White House to the White House plumber.
The actual plumber, not like the White House plumbers from Nixon's.
Yes,
era.
no, these were actual plumbers.
The actual plumber.
To the various cleaning personnel of the White House.
They're maids. You could call them a maid.
They have ushers and butlers. We don't really use those words anymore. Like the
Maid.
butlers,
Maid.
housekeeper. I don't know. It's like the plumber's an engineer, Ben.
Yeah, but he really is an engineer.
Yeah, we'll get into that. He winds up being very important to the president and the first gentleman.
Yes.
We first meet the president after the murders happened, when our characters, the detectives, have to decide whether or not they're going to interrupt the actual state dinner. Cordelia Cup wants to talk to every single person in the White House. Everyone else is saying, no, you have to let them go. There are some very important people here. Hugh Jackman is here. Notice how we didn't mention him in the cast. But as far as the series is concerned, Hugh Jackman is there. And initially, they go to the president. The president is like, sorry, Cordelia, I appreciate your help. I'm not keeping everyone here. Like, you work with what you got. Everyone's going home. At which point, Cordelia Cup notices that the foreign minister of Australia is wearing a shirt that belonged to the dead man upstairs. And at that point, we got to see an executive decision by the president. He says, everyone stay in. Lock him up. Lock her up. Lock them
Lock
up.
it down.
Lock
it
us
down.
up. Lock it down. So they go into quarantine mode. Everyone stays because of the president's call. And then, well, what do we know about this guy?
We know he's a first-termer.
The timeline of his presidency was a little wishy-washy to me.
Seems about a year and a half.
They play fast and loose with the word year. They love to say, well, a year ago this happened, a year ago that happened, and yet, if you actually track the timeline, there's a period of several months in between these things.
It's basically a year and a half because what we know about his first, what we see in flashbacks during that year plus is that, first off, well, before that, we find out that the president is gay and is married. We find out that it was a tough move-in.
Yes.
For the president and his family.
But a day that's always tough for the help.
Yes, it's always tough for the help, which is clearly something that's pulled from
the book.
From the book.
Yeah.
We find out that the March 4th terrorist attack.
Yes, there was a terrorist attack on March 4th in which we find out that the entire city of Washington was evacuated.
Except
for a skeleton crew of White House employees who had to stay to man the fort, so to speak.
We see a Christmas celebration.
There's one Christmas
that involves a fight over where parties should be. I mean, that's why I think it's a year and a half.
They say a year, so that would mean that if he entered office in January, then the events of this series, at least the night of the murder, is sometime midwinter, but not so midwinter that you'd expect to see snow anywhere or people
wearing
in heavy
jackets.
overcoats.
It's almost spring. Well, the chief of police says the administration has been in a free fall for the last 6 months. Cupp says it's the first year of an underperforming administration.
Yeah, first year, which implies it's not really over a year. We know the free fall for 6 months. We also get in that same conversation that they had to beg the Australian Prime Minister to come to take part in this because the previous administration pissed them off. Although one was not clear to me, did they piss off just the Australians or did they piss off like the whole world?
Yeah.
Because they specifically say, do you have any idea how shitty you have to be to piss off Australians? The prior administration did that time and time again. And now this administration feels it's their duty to clean up the mess of the previous. Kind of implying that it was just Australia they pissed off.
Yeah.
Which is weird. And they say they have to clean up the mess because Australia is important to us. Now, also unclear, do they mean important to the U.S. in general or important to the Morgans?
Yeah.
And what they plan to do in the White House. And then they also make reference to the fact that this isn't the first time a dead body has turned up in the White House. They do cite the death of Bess Truman's mom, Harry Truman's mother-in-law in 1952. No foul play suspected.
We'll see about that.
Although Cordelia Cupp thinks that maybe Zachary Tyler and his bowl of cherries might have been the result of foul play, but that is never further addressed in this series or in any other.
And we're not a
limited
true crime
series.
podcast. We're not a true crime podcast. But
Yes.
if we were, we might get more viewers.
Yeah.
We also know that the president has 2 guests living with them permanently.
3.
3.
We know that Trip Morgan, Jason Lee's living there.
Yes.
We know that the president's mother-in-law, Jane Curtin, is living there. But don't they also say that Harry Hollinger is staying there as well?
Something weird. I didn't fully understand. It was bizarre.
The Hollinger, that's Ken Marino's character, not a family member.
Yeah.
But he's a longtime friend, special advisor, and someone who is played up to be a puppet master, except he comes across as kind of a doofus puppet master.
You would think they would just be like, he's the chief of staff. There's like...
Yeah. We wind up meeting a separate chief of staff, but for like a second. Because literally every single person who works in the White House gets interviewed at one point on camera, on screen. A lot of speaking lines in this. A lot of intercutting. In fact, you mentioned in the cast, Al Franken is there. He's playing during a Senate commission, doing their own investigation of this night as a framing device for the whole mystery. The problem is
for the first part of it.
Eventually, we catch up to present day. Present day meaning the day of the commission.
Yes.
But until then, you have a structure in which you have characters being interviewed by the Senate Commission at the same time that we're seeing flashbacks to them being interviewed by Cupp the night
And
of.
then we get everything in her perspective.
And you get flashbacks within flashbacks.
Well, they make it seem like are the flashbacks the person who's giving the testimony their perspective, or is it just the way to get us back there? Because in theory, if you're asking somebody a question about something and then you do a flashback, the assumption to me would be that you're getting their perspective, and then that there are different perspectives for what happened the more people you interview.
Right.
And then within those perspectives, those flashbacks, you get other flashbacks from people who are not being interviewed by the Senate Commission.
Exactly. It's very confusing. I can see why Paul William Davies felt like I myself need to be the sole writer behind all of this because only I can keep track of it all.
Or because I don't want to answer these questions from people every day, so I'm just going to do it myself.
But whatever. That's not what we're here to talk about, Ben.
No, we're here to talk about the president. So we have the president's mother-in-law living there. We don't know exactly why the mother-in-law dislikes him so much, but she does.
Yeah.
We have the president's brother, Trip, who's just a massive fuck up in the vein of Roger Clinton or Billy Carter. I also looked up, there's a lot of siblings who were fuck ups. Yeah. Sam Houston Johnson, LBJ's brother, had a massive drinking problem and he had to be kept under constant supervision. Oh. Donald Nixon, he was involved in a business loan scandal. Something involving
made up that name.
Howard Hughes.
Donald Nixon.
Wait, and Donald Nixon? He might have been a crook. He might have been a crook. And going all the way back, Orville Grant, U.S. Grant's brother. He used U.S.'s name to get some shady land deals done back in the 1880s. So siblings. Oh,
Yeah.
and which one? The one who is married. This is more like a scandal after the fact. Coolidge's sister. Was it Coolidge's sister? Was like the de facto first lady?
You know, we've had a few de facto first ladies who were not married to the president. Most famous being for James Buchanan, the lifelong bachelor who never got married at all. I think his first lady was his niece. But yes, looking it up right now, and Coolidge's sister was in fact his first lady before he got married to kind of almost sort of a daughter-like figure. It's kind of gross. It was like a Woody Allen type thing. But yes, before that, Coolidge was first ladied by his sister. What is up with her, Ben?
After he passed, she came out as a lesbian and was in like a high-profile lesbian relationship.
Really? Well, people think that
Yes.
Buchanan was a long-time consummate bachelor, if you know what I mean.
No, he never found the right one. They didn't have dating apps back then. It makes sense.
They did the dating telegram.
But so those are the people who are living there, who the president has permitted to live there. What else do we know? We know, well, he's married to Elliot Morgan, who's kind of into new agey stuff, or at least can
Yeah.
be like bullied into it by Lily Schumacher, the social secretary.
Yeah, we can mention their choices of staff.
Yeah,
So we mentioned who they didn't choose. They don't choose their family.
correct.
I mean, I guess he chose his husband, but they do choose their staff. Like, for example, they inherited a pastry chef, Bronson Pinchot, who'd been there since the 80s, chosen by the Reagans. But they chose to pick a food truck chef from Oregon.
From Morgan, from Portland.
Yeah, who they just really liked what she was doing and anointed her to be the White House executive chef.
To quote, remake America's kitchen.
And of course, that winds up being a major source of conflict within the kitchen between Bronson Pinchot and Mary Wiseman's head chef. They do not get along. At one point, it said that this has been brewing for years. That does not track with the timeline.
Nope.
If she was chosen by the Morgans, she'd only been there at most a year. But their conflict is big enough that, let's say, a lot of things get broken in that kitchen, and possibly even a White House head usher.
Yes.
Gets broken in the process, too. We also know that they chose a social secretary who was the daughter of a major campaign backer.
A campaign backer who they believe, like the money that was put behind Morgan was like the final push for like a very close victory.
What got him elected. Yeah, and the White House social secretary, her father was a casino magnate. Mm-hmm. She spent most of her life living between Vegas, Macau. And Jupiter, Florida. Mm-hmm. Jupiter, Florida, which I believe is where Burt Reynolds is from. But it's also implied that she is of a different party than the president, although no parties are said.
But the parties are pretty clear,
Yeah.
which we'll get to.
But then, in terms of other people who they chose to be around, like, yes, we meet various other people in the administration, but not for any meaningful amount of time.
No, they're
much.
bodies. They're just bodies.
Yeah, we learn more about Al Franken and the one other senator played by Lisa Coop, who you mentioned, the senator from Colorado. Although their parties aren't mentioned either, Franken is basically playing himself.
Yes.
He's and at one point, Elisa Coop's character.
At one point he makes the honk honk noise over a woman's boobies.
Oh my goodness! At one point, Elisa Coop is trying to derail not the confirmation hearings. It was being confirmed. Yeah. The investigative hearings, and in order to get her to back down from her demands, he's offering her a list of things that might make her happy. And it's all a list of things you would offer a Republican.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, I'll give you the Department of Education on a platter, stuff like that. A lot of it has actually come true in the last month. But so based off of that, you can imply Elisa Coop, Republican, Franken, Democrat, President, Democrat,
Yes.
Social Secretary, Republican.
Yes.
We also get to meet one other person who got to live in a White House as a first lady.
Yes.
We got to meet the first lady from the previous administration, which is interesting because they said that administration fucked up relations with Australia. And now here's the first lady from that administration attending the state dinner. So did they smartly decided to include her as part of this olive branch, showing we can make peace with all of our previous issues?
Or was this just an aspect of the original book that he found interesting enough about the relationships that are forged between the people who work at the White House and the first families and how they are maintained post leaving the White House?
Yeah, because one of the suspects who work in the White House, she greatly preferred living with the previous tenants, or working with, I guess she wasn't living there, but she working with the previous tenants, and was so sad when they left office, not elected out. I mean, they were there for 2 terms, it gets said. But when they left office, that she has been in basically an alcoholic haze ever since. We know that at one point, Tripp went missing during the campaign. This is Jason Lee's character.
Yeah, in Tibet.
Yeah, and so they say Perry had to call in favors from China to get his brother extricated safely from some sort of unspoken dangerous situation.
Well, it makes sense if he's in with the Schumachers, who have casinos in Macau.
Yeah. Because my thought was, if he's on a campaign still, what position does he have that he can pull those strings with China? He's not a governor. It's like the governor of Kentucky's going to have any leverage there. But yeah, that's a good point. He can go through the social secretary's dad. We also know that Perry's mom is from Australia.
Yeah.
We know that Perry did not like Hamilton. We know that compared to Jason Lee, Perry got the work hard gene.
Yes.
We know that...
They don't like having Secret Service around is what we know.
We know that Perry likes his showers hot and powerful.
Scalding hot.
Like lava. And he likes the pressure like a fire hose.
He was going nuts over it. He said, that shower is colder than a brass toilet seat on the shady side of an iceberg.
In fact, that's one of the things that's driving the engineer crazy, the White House plumber, is he gets tasked with fixing the shower in the main bathroom of the White House, of the residence. And no one thinks he can do it because, and I'm sure the book goes into detail too about how old the plumbing is.
It feels like an LBJ story. Like, it seems like if you had to guess a president, if they were pulling this from something.
Yeah, Taft.
Oh, it's Taft?
It has to be. The bring in a whole tub to fit his body.
Yeah, but I'm saying specifically they would have to bring in a bathtub for Taft. But I'm saying if anybody would like scalding hot showers, it would be LBJ.
You think because, wait, why?
Because he just seems like the kind of guy who like goes straight from like, he's taking a shit next to it, and then he probably doesn't even wipe, goes straight into the shower for something scald and wipe, and that's like good enough to clean everything up.
Typically when people need to endure pain in order to feel something, it's because they've been desensitized.
Yeah.
So my question is, what has desensitized Perry's skin so much that he needs so much force, pressure, and pain in order to have a relaxing shower that other people would find unbearable? That's my question. Because apparently it was a source of stress in his marriage too, because his husband did not like things like that. And also at a certain point, we know he makes the choice to just outright leave the White House in a way that nobody knew. The president...
They moved to a hotel across the street.
They moved to, I think it was Blair. I think it's the place where like you would set up foreign dignitaries when they're staying. And so they leave the White House, and it does not make the news. Like Cordelia is shocked to learn that.
Well, I guess it means that they keep a clean house in terms of there not being any leaks. No leaks there, no leaks at Blair House. Everybody shuts up.
So it's funny to describe him makes him sound kind of sketchy when you're talking about the leaks and the Secret Service and whatnot. He sounds like he's not very transparent. It sounds like he's very protective of his inner circle and who gets to be in it, and does not like to have certain things, bandied about in public. In fact, that's one of the reasons why the Ken Marino character winds up reopening the case after it's seemingly solved.
And he needs to. He's gone. It seems like he's gone a little nutso. He's so crazy that they gave him a terrible beard.
A terrible fake beard.
A terrible fake beard. It was bizarre. For all the money this show had. This money had CGI birds flying around. You had these really long follow shots. They had that kind of like bisected White House at one point where like almost like a Wes Anderson movie. There's so much fucking money. This beard is like something you would buy at Party City. And Party City doesn't exist anymore. It's what you would find in a Party City dumpster.
Yep.
And they were like, here you go, Ken Marino.
Get off my plane.
In terms of tone, it's definitely Wes Anderson meets Paddington meets Clue.
Yeah.
Like, it has that vibe. Did we even talk about the fact that there are some uninvited guests?
Yes.
2 people, they just took the storyline from, 2009?
Yeah.
Where 2 Bravo stars snuck into a state dinner. They did that. They also did something different in which they just had a random guy.
I mean, they needed another guy in the room just for like the names because he was so dumb, but also his last name was Doombay.
I'm not going to lie, he's my favorite character in the show. The part where I thought it really worked, like everything came together for me. So the first 4 episodes, it was like a little bit like homework, especially because we're watching this for the show and I have to take notes and make sure we're keeping track of everything. But I think it was episode 5 or 6 where you got to just get him finally in front of the Senate panel. And for the first time in the show's run, you got like 15 minutes without the intercuts to anyone else's POVs or stories. It was just him.
Just Doombay.
And the fact that you got to get to know him, his personality, get to react to him, the fact that there was a very clear point of view, a very clear story, a very clear narrative being presented there that in its own right was funny and compelling, and it shed lights on other things while still raising new questions. That was my favorite part of the series. And that's where it all kind of came together. So there were those moments that happened, yeah, but in general, it's tonally was kind of across the map to the point where, and maybe this will come up later, it should have been a period piece. So, anything else about the president?
I don't know if there's anything else to say about it.
We do know that for the March 4th terrorist attack, which would have occurred
On March 4th.
on March 4th, yeah. So 2.5 months into his presidency, we do know that we do see one news chyron which calls it an attack on Washington. And when there's a fear it might happen again, which is why when certain select staffers are chosen to stay in the White House against their will, they're basically the only people in D.C. for all we know. And they're worried they might be not surviving the night.
Why would they not have been allowed to go down to the bunker? If everybody's gone, why would you just let these people go to the bunker? What's the big deal?
The PIOC, as we call it.
Yeah, the PIOC. Just let everybody go to the PIOC. Well, they're just like hanging out. It's like turns into like Breakfast Club where they're just like da 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 da. And
for a series in which the main point of its existence is to show you every square inch of the White House as a built set, as a CG set, as a miniature. They show this to you in every way, shape, or form. You don't go below the sub-basement. You don't go into the PIOC.
Yep.
There are certain things they don't show you. And obviously, they don't show the West Wing or the East Wing because those are offices. It's not called those shows. It's not called the East Wing.
It's not called The Office.
Yeah, it's called the Residence. That said, there are residential facilities in the PIOC. As we know, you can live for months down there. So I'm just saying, technically, they could have shown us some stuff down there.
How dare you come into this office and bark at me like some little junkyard dog? I am the President of the United States.
So this takes us now into the stuff we don't know about the president. How do you think he got into office, Ben?
I think it was definitely a governor from probably like a state like Colorado, someplace progressive, but not super far, but still a state that's progressive, but is still like slightly purple.
Except we know Eliza Coop's Republican senator is from Colorado and she hates Morgan. She specifically hates Ken Marino's character.
The president is gay, but the actor who's playing him is bi, so Colorado could conceivably go both ways. And there is isn't the governor of Colorado is gay?
Jared Polis.
Yes, he's definitely gay, Jared Polis.
It's on his Wikipedia page. Must be true.
Balding gay Jew. We're two out of those 3 things. We could almost be the governor of Colorado. But I think it's a place like that where Perry could spread his wings politically.
Well, I'm trying to think, what are some other states that you can conceivably see a gay governor? California, probably.
To become president, though, are like 2 different things, right? It needs to be a state that swings in that direction.
So like an Arizona, New Mexico type thing?
Arizona, yeah. I think Arizona, New Mexico, North Carolina.
Vermont or Minnesota? Yeah, I could totally see those states. Shockingly, Florida, no.
Perry Morgan seems like he would be governor of a state like Colorado that goes purple, still is able to get through a primary season handily, but still have a really tough election.
Yes.
Even when the other side is coming off of a toxic presidency.
A toxic two-termer. It's
Why would that doesn't sound crazy to me now?
No, it doesn't sound two consecutive termer.
Yeah.
Of course, they never say it was consecutive. No, it was implied. He was in there for eight years. The first lady seemed nice enough. She enjoyed talking to the staff. Staff loved her. They liked her. Yeah, she was getting off Nancy Reagan vibes. So I guess maybe they were trying to imply that the previous tenant was Reagan-esque.
So I think he's a purple state governor, possibly Colorado. A better looking version of the current governor of Colorado.
But he had to have a job before governor.
He was a
Lawyer,
finance guy.
prosecutor.
He was a
Finance guy? You think he was just a rich guy who ran for office?
I don't think he was a rich guy. I think he was like doing okay, but how else do you get? Well, let's take it back. Maybe it isn't Colorado. Where would a casino magnate need a politician?
What, you're thinking he's a Nevada governor?
That might make more sense.
New Jersey?
Maybe Nevada.
We also know that Ken Marino's character does say that he's been working for decades to get his friend into this role. Like he highlighted his friend, Perry Morgan, as a future president back in college, presumably.
If it wasn't for him, he'd be the most popular history professor at the University of Wisconsin.
That's a American president callback.
Yes.
Not West Wing, because West Wing, we know that president taught economics at Dartmouth, where Shonda Rhimes went. Okay, so to me, what is the most stereotypical path? If you're Ken Marino and you have a friend who you think could be president, what are you encouraging him to do? I think you want to get him into politics as soon as possible. State House, state Senate. You might not want to mess around with mayor, city politics, because once you get bogged down in city politics, you might be staying them for a long time. So I don't think he was a city councilman. I think he probably was a lawyer, maybe did some time in the service, maybe went to West Point possibly. You think Marino could have pushed him to be like, hey, buddy, you go to West Point. That'll help set your career for politics on a very impressive note.
I guess the question would be, what year is it in this story?
I'm not saying he was openly gay back in the 90s when he would have done that.
We don't even know, because we know that like Bush and Clinton exist in this timeline. They're referenced. We don't know like when the timeline goes off the rails.
Now, well, we know that the White House is basically it's full of presidents of both parties. It's got the most neutral decor imaginable. In fact, they dressed the White House almost as if you'd expect it to look in a period piece.
Yeah.
Like there's the only modern touches were really in the solarium, which really pissed me off. To me, the mark of a good White House resident set production is what do they do with the solarium? A, do you see the solarium? And I'll tell you this, for the first 5 episodes, I didn't think we'd seen it, and I was pissed off. I'm like, you're doing the White House and you're not doing the solarium? And then I find out, no,
test, yeah.
We saw the solarium. It's been there the whole time. They just made it look like the most boring room possible. They covered up all the windows. How do you have a solarium if you're covering the stuff that lists the solar part of the solarium? Yeah. Anyway, where were we, Ben? Where was I before?
We were trying to figure out how he is his path to the presidency.
Yeah. You're playing West Point.
The fact that if DC was under attack.
Yes. Within 2.5 months of him taking office.
And he just hightailed it out. Nothing about him screams like military to me.
But that said, his administration has only been in free fall for 6 months. So he weathered the attack storm, came out looking good, and then something else derailed it.
Yeah.
That got things going down. Wow, we are really getting into the weeds on this guy.
We're going deep on Perry Morgan.
Speaking of into the weeds, we think he does pot. Did he inhale, Ben? Did he inhale?
At the very least, his husband vapes.
I think Ken Marino kept Perry as clean as possible. He's like, you're my guy. You're my horse into the White House. I actually think West Point does, to a certain degree, make some sense. But I do think that as soon as he got out of whatever his early 20-something commitments were to service, he was running for office as soon as he could. He was a young, late 20-something, barely 30-year-old state senator, state house, rode that to governorship, rode that to the White House.
I don't know, his brother beat him up in a scene.
We see that in the solarium.
His brother Trip, Jason Lee, full on like body tackles him, and we don't see the president put up a good fight. So
he defend himself. Secret Service. The Secret Service, are they around? Do they have to intervene there?
And it takes a moment, but they eventually come in.
Okay.
Okay. So we have different views on how we got there, but I think we agree he's definitely a Democrat, and that was his party.
Yes.
How? Because I'm the goddamn president of the United States of America.
So, what do we think this show says about the year 2025, the year it was released? Or the year it was made, which I think is the years 2022, 2023, and 2024.
Why don't you go first? It seemed like you had a theory that you wanted to expound on about the Lily Schumacher character.
Give me your spoiler horn, Ben.
Brr, 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 brr.
Okay. So the murderer is Paul William Davies, the writer himself. He's the one who killed A.B. Winter, the Carlo Esposito character.
That's true.
Yes.
Because there was a scene where they pop out, and Detective Cupp looks up, and everybody else looks up, and then there's a green screen, and looking down is the writer, Davies, and she's like, "You did it! You caused us to do this." And we're like, whoa, this is getting super meta. This is like an episode of She-Hulk.
Or as you mentioned, it's adaptation.
Adaptation, yes.
Yeah. By the way, brief tangent here. That's because you mentioned true crime. That's why I think true crime is so popular. Because ultimately, in these fictional narratives, the murderer is the writer. There is a hand of God. The person had to die. The show, movie, series, book that you're currently enjoying would not exist if the person did not die.
Correct.
It's not there. But in true crime, there is a world where the person lives. There is not the hand of God. Now, the good podcasts and true crime documentaries, they craft enough narrative that you feel like you're on a story that was always meant to go this way. But because you, as a viewer, know it didn't have to go this way, it injects a level of uncertainty that makes the ultimate reveal of who the murderer is feel like a real revelation of the universe. Versus in these series, the ultimate killer always is the author. Because they're the one who made all the choices that led to this point, and there were no other choices to ever consider. And what was the choice that Paul William Davies made in this series? The social secretary, the Republican social secretary. And so that's why I think it's interesting. Oh, by the way, who's super rich, to which someone points out during the big scene in the yellow room when Cordelia Cupp is explaining how everything happened, why it happened. She points her finger at the social secretary after going through all the different red herrings, including briefly the president. There's like maybe 2 seconds where you think maybe the president could have done it, but that goes away pretty quickly. Yeah. And so it's that she's rich. Why would she do all this? Because it turns out what she was covering up was overcharging for White House contracts. By finagling these White House contracts for all the work she was doing as social secretary, she was pocketing a lot of money and giving a lot of money to friends, and it was a grift, basically. Yeah. And someone says, she's already super rich. Why would she do that? To which Cordelia says,
that's how they get rich.
Rich people steal money. Sometimes that's how they become rich. Yeah. And one could also maybe imply that the casino business is not the most stable and that maybe there might be problems at home. But yeah, so I do think it was interesting that the ultimate choice by the author of this series is that the murderer was the Republican who bought their way into a Democratic White House. A Republican who eschewed tradition and sought to undermine, destroy, or fire anyone with any institutional knowledge to tell her that she's full of shit. Because that's what we see throughout the series. We see her, basically, the entire series comes down to people who respect the traditions of the White House and the one person who ultimately does not. Even Ken Marino gets a speech in the beginning about the importance of this White House. This place is bigger than any of us, he says to Cordelia, to which Cordelia says, of course it's bigger than me. I'm in it. What are you trying to say here? And so one reading of it is it's about tradition versus those who might come in and try to exploit and or hamper and or destroy that tradition. Another way is to view it as the one Republican in a sea of Democrats. And so obviously the Republican is the one who did it.
You're hitting on like the lack of respect for tradition, for the dismantling of institutions. Lily Schumacher is also like a new kind of Republican that we're seeing. Did you read that article in New York Magazine that came out right after around the inauguration called the Cruel Kids?
No.
It's about all like the young, good-looking Republican influencers and money managers and how they supported Trump, but they're not the kind of Republicans you would expect from the past. They are into they're probably having more sex than the Democrats. They're probably doing more drugs than the young Democrats, and it's a hedonistic way of living. And the fact that Lily Schumacher's like bestie in all this is Taron Killam's character, who's kind of this new agey influencer, guru who believes in like sound baths and frequencies and having hydration stations, which on paper wouldn't necessarily vibe. You would think would vibe with classic Republicans.
Yeah.
But I think this new, younger Republican side that has come out over the past year or so is kind of like typified by Lily.
I mean, looking at over the course of our lifetime, we've definitely seen the overall reputations of the parties flip. When we were teenagers, even through early 20s, the fun people were the people you want to go to a Democratic Party, and Republicans were the old stodgy ones who you would not want. Like it's like, oh, going to a Republican Party felt like going to a party thrown by your grandparents.
Yeah.
And that has 100% flipped within the last couple of years. In fact, it didn't even happen during the 2016-2020 cycle. That's a pretty recent phenomenon, and one of the reasons why I do think there is a youth problem probably for the Democratic Party.
Is it a youth problem? Because there's also like a lack of fun from Gen Z in general. Like the people who are into politics, they don't seem like fun people.
The stereotypical college Republican still dresses like an 80-year-old man. Yes.
Yeah, I'm saying dressed like an 80-year-old man, but who would I rather have a drink? Who do I think I would have more fun with? Like that classic, who do you want to have a beer with? Which is kind of bullshit, but also at the same time, like who's having more fun? It seems like Republicans are having more fun than Democrats.
Yeah.
And even if you were to bring up the idea of having fun to a Democrat, they're like, how could you even talk about fun with
right
what's
now,
going on in the world?
In this economy?
Motherfucker, I'm not asking if you're interested. I'm the president of the United fucking States, man.
Okay, did you have anything on the year 2025 of it all?
I like what we talked about in terms of Lily Schumacher. I think that's kind of the discussion.
It's funny. I want to say obviously it's conscious. They must have made that decision. But there's also, I can see a world where he really went through 20,000 different ways it could go, landed on her, and didn't even realize the way it makes the most sense for him is because of the things we just said.
And at the end of the day, he made the choice that I'm sure like is also supported in the original book, is that the White House as an institution exists not because of the person who lives in it or the people who live in it, but the people who provide support for it and the people who do uphold the traditions and support the traditions, but also understand that society changes and that it's a living building and it's a living institution.
It's a living building, but it's also important while not being handcuffed to the past, recognizing the past, understanding that there's important reasons why certain traditions exist, need to continue existing, why it's important to have institutional knowledge, and why it's more important to sustain tradition than to seek to destroy them simply for one's own self-gratification. And the legacy and approval ratings of this president.
Oh, this Perry Morgan's a one-termer, my man. Like, this is a really bad. I don't know how you bounce back from March. Well, first off, razor thin victory, so it doesn't have everybody on his side. March 4th attacks, which it doesn't seem like it really like boosted him in any way. Typically, maybe it would help bring the country together. It doesn't appear that way based off of what people have said. Of how he's been doing over his first year. There's a murder in the White House committed by the daughter of his biggest donor.
Yep.
And then he chooses not to live in the White House anymore. Who's paying for that, Eric? Who's paying for him to live the high life in a hotel across the street from arguably one of the greatest residencies in the world?
They do point out rightly that the president is responsible for out of their own salary,
yes,
there certain accommodations made to their living expenses while in the White House. So one would assume that if he's leaving the White House, then now he's not only paying for food, but also rent.
But then there's still the detail. There's a lot goes into it. Even if it's just across the street, it's a lot.
Yeah.
The traffic, I mean, I'm sure people are wondering, why is there always so much traffic at these certain times when, you know, he's probably shutting down traffic every time he's got to cross the street to go back to the White House.
Maybe
None of
tunnels.
this is good. This dude's a one-termer. His approval rating is, you always say that there's a bottom to it. Yeah, it's probably in the low 30s. He's a low 30s guy. Australians might like him.
My take on this.
Yes.
There is one politician who I think we can look to as basically to see what happens to Perry Morgan. And that is in the summer of 2001. There was a murder, a missing girl in D.C.
Yes, there was. Chandra Levy.
Yes, and Gary Condit. Because there's a moment in this series where the murder has seemingly been solved, and since we're in spoiler territory, and it's been ruled a suicide. Mm-hmm. But people don't stop talking about it. And so that is why the Henry Hollinger character, Ken Marino, brings Cordelia Cupp back to D.C. It's like, you have to put a lid on this because people are still talking, and it's the gossip and the rumors that are going to get us. So even though they got possibly the best outcome, suicide.
Always. They're always like, please don't be a suicide, please.
Yeah. Even though it was the best outcome politically for them, as far as the socials were considered, it didn't go away. The memes were still there. The 24-hour news cables were, and all the news networks were still talking about it. And so it clearly entered Gary Condit territory, where the story was bigger than the underlying facts. And so just like with Gary Condit, I don't think you can ever put that back in the bottle. His career in politics was over, even though we know what really happened, and it did not involve him. And so I think nothing's going to clear the stank of murder in the White House off of the Morgan administration. And you're right, he's a one-termer if he even lasts through the first term. And his approval ratings, I won't go quite that low, though, because I do think that if you're a Democrat and you voted for him, you've been given enough information to not need to change your mind about him based off of any of this. You're like, no, you didn't do it. Like, it was a Republican. It was her. So I still think it's going to be in the 30s, maybe like a 33, 34, depending on how the economy is doing. If it's a good economy, you might get up close to 40. Bad economy, closer to 30. I still think he's in the 30 to 40 range.
Okay.
We still have one more thing I promised the audience.
Yes, what?
This is the third episode in a row of a current new fake president we're covering as it's being released to the public. And I have yet to share my theory, my explanation for why it's happening now.
Ooh,
I don't have time to do it now because I think we have a great opportunity to do it in the future. Because guess what, Ben? There's one more coming up. G20 with Viola Davis.
Oh, I forgot about it.
It comes out in April. I think it might even be out by the time you hear this.
Amazing.
I think we should save that discussion for then.
Wait, are you doing another cliffhanger?
I'm just saying, Brave New World, Paradise, Zero Day, Residence. This isn't a quadrilogy. This is a quintilogy. We got G20 coming up. This is the winter of new fake presidents.
Into the spring.
Into the spring.
This has been Fake Presidents.
Yeah, this has been Eric Buckman.
I've been Ben Oren.
Artwork is still by Ann Hecker. Not just the artwork that you see on your podcast player right now, but the artwork that you see on the interwebs, or especially if you see any of the banner artwork where she did that wonderful Mount Rushmore of fake presidents.
With one, we haven't even done yet.
Yeah, two.
We haven't done Strange Glove. Oh, we haven't done Beep.
We haven't done Beep yet. Yeah. You can reach us at fakepresidents@gmail.com.
Yeah. Oh, the music's by John. Oh, the music's by Johnny Sadoff, by the way.
Yeah, and you can find us on the at multiple social media platforms, usually fake_presidents, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads. Drop us a line.
Yes, rate, review, subscribe.
Yeah. Are you sick of us covering new stuff? Do you want us to go to old stuff? Send us some old stuff. We had a suggestion the other day. Someone wrote to me and said we should do Canadian bacon. Is that a good idea? Let me know.
I think that'd be a good idea to do Canadian bacon.
You think so? I think the moment passed. I think that was more of a February, early March thing.
I think it's something that will continually come back.
You think so?
Over the next, 3.5 years.
Half? It's still almost 4, Ben.
Yeah.
Closer to 4. And that's why we're here for you, friends. So you don't have to think about real politics ever again. Bye. To me, it's akin to how back in the 90s, a big deal for awareness of certain issues was the awareness side. Fighting cancer, people not realize that certain cancers even exist or are a big deal. Bringing awareness to them might not cure them, but it's a step towards ultimately addressing the issue in some meaningful way. An important step.
There's the episode of Mr. Belvedere where they had a kid who had AIDS on it.
Yeah.
And I was like, but it didn't cure AIDS. What's the point?
Yeah.
Like, Mr. Belvedere didn't cure AIDS. Like,
Also,
what is he even doing?
He's just an actor. He doesn't really have AIDS.
Yeah, they didn't even use a real person who had AIDS. Ugh.